Welcome to our conversation on women investing in women. This month, as we think of Women's History Month and women inspiring women and women supporting women, it's important to remember we as women are the nurturers, we as women are the caregivers, and women are at the center of everything that happens in society. How do we honor the women who are making a difference in seamless ways every day? And we are going to talk to different women from different places, different walks of life to see how are they being invested in by other women and how are they investing in others so that together as a community of women, we're lifting each other up. It is only together we can thrive. How are we going to make that happen is the thrust of our conversation. And today you are going to love our guest. And Robin is going to introduce our guest and get this started today.
Wonderful. Our wonderful guest today is Debra Morrison. I met Debra maybe 5 or 6 years ago, was immediately struck by her warmth, her intelligence, her competence, and especially by her focus on finances and managing finances, and particularly focusing on women and narrowing it down even more to helping widows. And I was always very impressed with everything that Debra had to offer. We remained friends and business colleagues over the years. And so when Cass and I decided to start this Zoomcast podcast, immediately Debra came to mind. So Debra, tell us more about how you, a little bit more about you, how you got into finances, how you got into, women, widows, etc. So go ahead and just tell us about you and your mission.
Well, thank you, Robin. And the friendship is rich indeed. I'm so grateful for it and for you and your impact. And I had a very interesting experience as a young girl. My aunt took us from the farm, Western Pennsylvania, 100-acre beef cattle farm, very little culture, to New York City because she lived in New Jersey. And I was perhaps 8 years old, and she took us to tour the New York Stock Exchange. I was so mesmerized. I was like, my nose was pressed up against that plexiglass, looking down at all of that activity and the flurry of paper tickets being flown and flying about. And I really had to be moved along from that position of just completely paralyzed, looking and such awe. It was so completely different for me. And yet it wasn't frightening in the least. It was energizing me. And I said to myself at the time, I don't know how, yet I'm going to be a part of that energy when I grow up. Well, fast forward, I took a business track, if you will, in college. And I really was introduced to the stock market from that experience. And yet my grandfather was a stock market investor. And he gave each of the grandchildren, myself included, four different shares of 4 different companies. And he gave it to us with trembling hands. I remember it to this day. His hands were trembling. He was not an emotional man. And he said, don't sell these, Debbie, until you have to. And I knew instantly that there was something more than simply paper there, right? And so I began to piece these aspects together and decided I wanted to be a part of this energy, which really flowed through a lot of society. So I have always spoken of money as energy since then. And I continue to feel that the analogy works so well.
Yeah. It's interesting that you use the word that it flows. I've heard of people talk about that the money flows and money is energy. And that's one of the reasons it's called currency.
Exactly.
We call money currency. So it's a current flowing through society. And that's a beautiful, I love that image of your grandfather handing this to you and you being prescient to know this is more than just a piece of paper. And how did you then channel this into—
Before you go there, Robin, I just wanted to add a thought here? So,
Yeah.
Deborah, when you're talking about money as energy, and this is being an international program, an international conversation, there are cultures that look at the feminine energy as an energy, right? I come from that part of the world where there are three aspects of feminine energy: knowledge, wealth, and courage.
Mm.
And wealth as a form of energy is the feminine counterpart for the masculinity of protection and preservation.
Wow.
Okay. And the wealth, there are 9 different kinds of energy wealth. This earth is a wealth.
Yes.
The air and the water around us is a wealth. The life forms around us are wealth. And so is the financial element, the medium of exchange. So when you start talking about money and finance as a energy flow, it resonates for me. And I know it's going to resonate for half the world, because we're raised to believe that our femininity embodies that energy of wealth. Our love is a wealth, right? Same way, how are we going to use this medium of exchange
Yes.
to then protect and preserve what we nurture is what's coming to my mind. So as we combine this Eastern, Western way of thinking, what comes up for you in terms of, as you're helping women, especially widows, how are you helping them channel it? And when you talk about it, also talk about why you selected to work with widows.
Well, thank you. That's a great segue. And I am completely in congruency with the flow and the currency of money being the force, if you will, within us individually and as a sisterhood, and certainly as a whole humanity. And I think women have a very contextual notion around life. Men are more content oriented. Women like to know, hey, how does this fit together? So how does money fit together and with how I am to be in this world, whether I'm raising children or whether I'm having a career or both? And I am very passionate about having women get into relationship with money. And I always hold up, $100 bills. Yeah, these are real, 10 of them. And I want us to all be comfortable holding money. It's nothing to be feared. It is something that is going to buy us options. You see, money as currency is that which we can negotiate with. That is our trading mechanism, if you will. In the olden days, people bartered. Sometimes people barter still. And the aspect of viewing money as a tool is important.
Absolutely.
So the tool called money can buy us women a lot of options. And we women like options. That's why a lot of us prefer to shop. We like to shop because, and then here's a better deal, and here's a better deal. Sometimes we've had to stretch that family dollar quite a while in order to make things work. And so it's completely congruent that women would be managing money well, and women do manage money very well because they get the if I spend it now, then I won't have it later. And I know that I always use analogies when I speak, because I know that some women are still kind of boxed in about the aspect of money. And so I use analogies to bring it home. And I say, we got to be as smart as squirrels. Mm-hmm. Squirrels run around in the Northeast with their jowls, completely filled with nuts. They're hiding them because they know they're going to still be hungry in the winter. And so we as women need to be as judicious. We need to not spend every single nut that comes into our purview and into our hands. And we need to put some ahead for the future.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that one of the comments that you made, that Cass and I were talking about, women investing in women, women helping women, and just that notion of helping someone, of preparing for the future, helping the future, helping yourself and helping the future. And so I love that comment that you made. is really, really very beautiful. So how did you happen to then focusing on widows?
Well, just one little tag note on this last thought. I'm a voracious reader. One of the best books I've ever read is Muhammad Yunus's Banker to the Poor. And he was talking about how women had lending circles in Bangladesh, and they would gather together and bond together, often with the threat that they could be killed by their husbands or the authorities, who were bastardizing women already, charging them usury rates so that they couldn't make baskets and so forth. So I throw that out there. Everybody read Muhammad Yunus's Banker to the Poor. Women are very responsible with money. Now, here's the issue. We need to forgive ourselves for past missteps around money. And I often say, who do you think you are if you cannot accept the fact that you have made a financial misstep? I have made them. Warren Buffett has made numerous that's with a B, billion-dollar mistakes. And yet women spend a lot of time, way too much time, flagellating ourselves. Oh, I did that and I did that. People would come into my office all the time. Oh, I made a horrible mistake. I say, tell me about it. They'd tell me about it. I'd repeat it. I'd say, what else? No, that's it. Well, if that's it, we are going to be fine, right? Yet, before we can gain confidence, we need to eradicate and pull out by the roots, that kind of self-flagellation, that shame around our money. And now we have a clean slate and we can move and look forward and have money as our tool to make it happen. Now, the widow piece is interesting because I had my own firm for a number of years, and I joined a billion-dollar firm in July of 2001. And I was just on that job with that new firm 1 month. And the towers in New York City came down and the Pentagon was struck by terrorists. And we all went to the hospital and gave blood, and we came back. And what were we going to do for people? We were right across the river from New York City. And all 4 white men looked at me in unison and they said, we're going to give pro bono service to widows and widowers for 1 year. And Debra, you're the person that's going to do it. And it seemed like a daunting task, but I did realize that I would be the best person to do it. One, I'm not afraid of death. I have a large family. I have familiarity with death. And so I began to give pro bono service to 8 widows, 1 widower, and a 12-year-old orphan.
Oh, wow.
It was some of the most challenging work I've ever done, and yet some of the most rewarding. And when I was in the middle of doing that, I realized, wow, you know something about grief, but you don't know a lot about grief. And so I then enrolled in the Grief Coach Academy to become certified as a certified grief coach. And it has really paid me dividends along the way to sprinkle into my advice to both widowed people and non-widowed people, anyone who suffered a loss or perceives themselves as having suffered a loss, to break through that paralysis into the freedom, into the next step, calling us into our next empowered chapter. And we can do that so much more effectively and without stress, with more tools in our tool belt, read money in our accounts.
I love how you are taking the psychological breakthrough as the entry point, Debra, because ultimately finance is a human science. It's a behavioral science. Accounting is pure science, finance is accounting, economics, and human psychology integrated. So the fact that you have tuned into that and you have figured out a way to tap into that is brilliant, because the psychological relationship with money and wealth is what's determining the entire future trajectory of a person.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So what are some of the resistance you face when you do this? Because not everybody wants to admit and accept. Some people are only in, those stages of grief. Not everybody is at a point where they can accept and move forward.
Right, right. And I think it's a powerful point. And I believe that everyone needs to feel that their story has been heard. And then if empathetic ears, have arrived and you're able to tell your story and it lands with someone, now it's kind of like, it's like a little checklist, okay, I did that. And so it's the extent to which grieving people, whether it's the loss of a person or a 401k or a job or career or what, grieving people do need to be heard, and then they need to be heard into the speech which will follow. And I say that a lot of the timidity and the closed down state of women has to do with abject fear that this is the worst thing in the world, right? And when I've worked with widowed people, in time, they say, the worst thing that ever happened to me ended up being the best thing. In so much as I don't take the loved ones for granted, I stop and pause and I smell the flowers, etc. Now, this takes some time for them to move through that entire feeling and the abyss of loss. I get it. I've lost a number of people close to me. Yet I hearken back to giving people the Dr. Susan Jeffers, who was a dear friend of mine. She's dead since, of cancer, unfortunately, but she wrote so many, 10 New York Times bestsellers, one of which was Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And Susan crafted a pain power continuum. And I use this a lot because, and it's in my TEDx talk, which I'll be happy to give you a link for, but she talks about a pain power continuum in which on the side of pain, we have helplessness, depression, and paralysis. But then on the other side of each of those feelings, we have choice, excitement, and action. And so who doesn't fall back into paralysis from time to time? We all do. The idea is don't buy a residence there. Don't take up residency in that pain portion of how we hold fear. Because Dr. Susan Jeffers said, if so many people are out there doing things that are wholly new to themselves, then we must conclude that fear itself is not the problem, rather how we hold the fear. And so if we're helpless, we know that there's a continuum and we can move ourselves along to the power side, which is choice. And if we're paralyzed, we know we can inch our way across to the action side of that pain power continuum. And that's the hope I want to give each of us women who may have made financial missteps. There's power here and there's choice here. I want to invite you to come along, grab the elbow of a coach or someone to support you, or a collective of women in which you will have safe space to admit your story, tell your story, and to grow from that, because there's a lot more ahead of us than what is behind us.
Yeah, that's beautiful. In your journey, I know we just have a few minutes left, but what have been some of the challenges that you have faced as you've moved into this, either internal challenges or external challenges in this path that you have been navigating?
Well, I started in the business at age 21. It was an old white male business. And so there were a whole lot of glass ceilings that I broke. And yet still women, and I now am a financial life coach for mature women, and which I define as over 60 years old, because the socialization, Robin, was so horrible. Don't worry your little head over that, Betty. Bob will handle it. Well, that's great if Bob doesn't die prematurely or come home and trade you in for 230s one day. Right. So women typically have not been socialized properly around the tool called money. And so what I know for a fact is when I say to women, hey, the last 80 plus years of returns of the stock market have been double that of the bond market. Now we bring in a different lens by which we can view the stock market, right? Because up until now, women have looked at news media or something, and when someone says the market is crashing, the clear inference is, don't just sit there, stupid, do something, right? Like that this news pundit really means go sell something, but then they hit the sell button, they lock in a loss, and now it's double trouble. So I want to bring up our confidence around our money so that it equals our confidence around other common sense aspects of our life. Making a meal You have to plan it. There's a recipe. Your financial portfolio, there's a recipe. It's not all bonds. No, it's not. Stocks aren't just scary. They are powerful instruments. And it's basically companies that make the clothes that you're wearing, the utilities that you're using, the technology that you are enjoying. Get over yourself about stocks being bad. That is absolutely thwarting your success, because inflation is costing the cost of goods to increase and increase and increase. And unless you invest in an asset class that traditionally has returned more than taxes and inflation, you will be sinking instead of swimming. And there's no sense in that. There's no sense in that. We can do it, women. We can get into the flow of money and be a part of the giving and the taking in this currency of money and the currency of our reward.
Beautiful, beautiful.
I love how you are educating them on the stocks and the bonds and the willingness to take risks, because calculated risks bring rewards, right?
Absolutely.
And one of the questions that's coming up for me is, yes, in the United States, women are not socialized to deal with money and manage money growing up.
Right.
I come from a part of the world where daughters are raised to be the head of the household and head of finances. And I was able to run a family and manage the finances as a 16-year-old in a foreign country. Wow. Without parents. So I'm thinking to myself, I am in the world of finance. I am one of those young women who became a CFO for a Fortune 100 firm at the age of 32. Wow. So I've always wondered, what is it about the American culture, the richest country in the world, that truly tells the women, don't worry about it? And it's the singular reason why men are comfortable. And I call it, the men leave their starter wife and go with their trophy wife. The starter wife is the one who helped them build their life, their careers, everything. But because this woman gave up everything that she wanted to make his life successful, now he can walk away with somebody else. How do we help women before they get to that stage?
Well, that's a powerful synopsis. And I believe we help women by saying, this is your time to have your own accounts, have your own educational process around money, so that regardless of what the future holds, you have a working knowledge. Because I always say processing grief and learning money at the same time, very, very bad recipe, really not going to work so well, because there's a whole lot of emotion in processing grief. And so if you're left, if you will, in any fashion, you are emoting. And so I want us to bring our intellect into the playing field, onto the playing field here, and learn how it is that money works. Learn how compounding absolutely is the eighth wonder of the world, as Einstein said. So American women definitely need to have their own money source, and they need to direct their own 401k or 403b if they're in the workforce. And that needs to have a healthy concentration of stock for a 7+ year goal, not for 5-10 minutes away, but for 7+ years. We have to understand that there are different tools, there are different spices in our spice rack. You don't use all these great spices, vanilla, cinnamon and whatever, for a beef roast, right? You just don't. And you don't use, Montreal steak rub and garlic for a chocolate chip cookie. They are very good ingredients in and of themselves, but we need to be focused on what it is we're making. And so we're going to make cordon off, if you will, our goals and our needs in timelines. 0 to 12 months, 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, 5 to 7 years, 7+ years. And the 7+ years, which for most of us is retirement, that has to be in stocks. Get over yourself in looking at the current price differentials each day. And so when I make analogies, it lands for people. I'll do you one more. If a realtor came to your house and knocked on your door, Dr. Cass, your house is worth $469,000 and $4. And you're like, where do they come from? You shut the door. The next day, same realtor comes, Dr. Cass, your house is worth $469,573. You're not even opening the door the third day. Why? You're not selling. But we tend to get myopic about the price of our investments and think, oh, I bought it at 10, it's now at 8, I must have to sell it. Get over yourselves. Do not look at the price valuation. Look at how many units, more units you are buying when the unit price is lower. So this enables us to buy low. When we are systematically investing, which is the recipe for wealth, incidentally, women, systematic investing, not what I have left over in my wallet at the end of the month. No, pay yourself first. And systematically investing works beautifully when the market is going straight down, because we buy more units. And I want us to be unit accumulators, not focused on what's very unimportant unless you're selling today. And that's the price.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
As we bring this to a close, Debra, what is the best way for women to reach out to you and connect with you and have a direct one-on-one if they so choose to?
Well, thank you so much. I'm happy to give your audience a gift, and it's able to be had by going to Women Navigating Finances, womennavigatingfinances.com/10 mistakes. And this is the 10 financial mistakes women over 50 make and how to avoid them. And from that, you'll be on my mailing list, and you can email me at team@womennavigatingfinances.com. I'd be delighted to speak with anybody in this listening audience, because we as women want to help each other. I certainly am passionate about that. And together we can have it all. Yes, we can.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Absolutely. And that is the wisdom for the day, right? Together we can have it all. It's going to take all of us, regardless of where we come from, regardless of what we do, stepping in, leaning in, asking for help, giving help. It is only together we're going to make it. And so as we bring this to the close, I want to share what we always remind us of. Every human interaction is our opportunity for transformation. So go out there, meet people, transform lives, and in the process, pause, take a moment to transform yourself.